Another thing that no one really talks about when they talk about eating to satiation or just eat until you're full and everything will be fine is you can't just give that as a blanket statement, because I, especially in the past, used to be a very fast eater. So if you are a fast eater versus a slow eater, those calories... Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to another Sunday Q&A. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and today I'm going to be answering the question of how I gained 22 pounds of fat in 28 days on the carnivore diet. And this is a follow-up to last week's video where I asked you guys the question of, if you believe that calories don't matter, then how do you explain that I put on 22 pounds of fat in 28 days on the carnivore diet? And nobody was able to give me any sort of answer. Instead, they would either just ask me more questions or they would make assumptions. So I'm going to include a shot right over here to the thread. There were over 300 questions, so I have a lot to unpack, but one of the assumptions was that I was counting calories the entire time, because I mentioned in the video that I never counted calories over the course of the last 11 years. And then for the experiment, I ended up counting calories, and I had determined that I was consuming 1,600 calories pre-experiment. And then I added an additional 3,000 on top of that, so 4,600 calories during the actual experiment. And somebody had said, well, if you weren't counting calories, then how do you possibly know that you were eating 1,600 calories? You're clearly lying. And no, I wasn't. It's actually quite simple. My diet is pretty regimented in terms of what I eat. I was on a 5-day rotation, and all of the meats that I consumed I bought from Butcher Box, so they came in pre-packaged and pre-weighed amounts. I had 2 pounds of chicken thighs, 1.5 pounds of lean ground beef, 2 pounds of beef liver, 750 grams of bacon, and 12 ounces of salmon. So what I did pre-experiment was I ended up putting all of those numbers into an app that I found, and it came out to 7,545 calories over the course of 5 days. You divide that by 5, that gives you 1,509 calories. And then I added in a little bit extra to account for the tallow, butter, lard, ghee, and duck fat that I was incorporating into my diet. So it would have been somewhere between 1,600 to 1,700 calories, but that is how I got the number. It's not that I had been tracking the entire time, it's just I was eating very consistently, and I input the numbers after the fact into the actual app. Then, with regard to the actual food itself, it worked out to about 1.58 pounds of food per day. And then, because of the bones from the chicken thighs, let's just call it 1.5 pounds. So let's remove the pound, though, the actual weight from the bones. And then in terms of my actual satiation level, prior to the experiment, I would only eat until I was about 30 to 50% full. I never ate to satiation, and over the course of the last 11 years, I never really ate to satiation either. And the reason being, it had nothing to do with me trying to maintain a certain level of leanness. The reason that I never eat to satiation and I only eat to 30 to 50% full is because of my budget. All of the foods that I eat, it's all grass-finished meats, and if I were to eat to satiation on grass-finished meats, my budget would more than double, and I would be spending close to $2,000 a month on groceries. So that is the reason why I don't eat to satiation. It has nothing to do with trying to maintain a certain level of leanness. It has everything to do with trying to save my budget. But that's that part. And then with regard to the experiment, so I had mentioned that I was consuming an additional 3,000 calories on top of what I had been consuming normally throughout the course of the last 11 years. And then somebody had said, well, if you were consuming 3,000 calories additional, then you clearly weren't eating what you wanted to eat. You must have been force feeding. And no, once again, I was not force feeding. That 28 days was actually the only time over the course of the last 11 years that I consistently ate until I was satiated. And when I say satiated, I'm not talking about full or stuffed. I was actually satiated. I could have ate a little bit more, but I didn't. And with regard to how I could have done that, it's actually quite simple. I do very well on high fat. So my diet is roughly 70 to 80% fat. And when you're eating 70 to 80% fat, it's quite easy to stack up those extra 3,000 calories. And with regard to the meat, I was only consuming 3 pounds worth of meat per day. I was eating medium ground beef, which was 78 to 82% fat. So on average, it was around 80% lean, not 80% fat, but it was roughly 80% lean. And then I was also eating beef liver, and then I was incorporating a lot of butter and ghee. When you're eating medium ground beef, butter, and ghee, it is very easy to consume that many additional calories without stuffing yourself, because again, the calories really add up when you're eating that much fat. And then another thing that no one really talks about when they talk about eating to satiation or just eat until you're full and everything will be fine is you can't just give that as a blanket statement, because I, especially in the past, used to be a very fast eater. So if you are a fast eater versus a slow eater, those calories again could really add up, because I could easily consume 2 pounds of meat in under 5 minutes the way that I used to eat in the past. Whereas now I try to take my time, I'm a lot more slow, and the reason that I do that is because I'm not eating a lot, so I want to make it last as much as possible. But with regard to the medium ground beef and the beef liver, if I eat it with a tablespoon, I could pound that 1.5, because I'm having it twice a day, so 1.5 in the morning, 1.5 pounds at night. 1.5 pounds, I could easily have that in under 5 minutes if I'm eating it with a tablespoon, whereas the way that I eat it now, I have this little espresso spoon that's about that big, and 2 pounds of food. I just did it last night. I ended up counting, and it actually took me close to 20 minutes to eat it with that little spoon, whereas if I had a tablespoon and I ate the way I used to eat in the past, easily I could eat that in under 5 minutes. So that's another thing that often gets overlooked and never gets discussed when people say, just eat until you're full. No, don't eat until you're full. You need to practice certain habits as well. If you're a fast eater, eating until you're full is a terrible strategy because it's going to take your body a while to realize that you're full, and then you're screwed. But anyway, that is how exactly I ended up gaining the 22 pounds of fat in 28 days. And now I want to get into how exactly I lost the 22 pounds. It took me a few months to lose it, but basically what I did was I went back to eating until I was no longer satiated. So again, I would eat until I was about 30 to 40% full. And again, I was eating according to my budget. The reason that I did 30 to 40% fullness is because if I ate until I was full, I would be spending over $2,000 a month on grass-finished meats. But aside from that, the other thing that I incorporated was I went back to around 1,600 calories per day. And another thing was, because I had been so used to consuming to fullness for the course of those 28 days, I was ravenous every single time. Normally, when I would eat that 1,600 calories, I would always be hungry after I would finish eating, but I would be able to kind of ignore it a little bit. Whereas when I was actually consuming the 1,600 calories after the fact, I would not be able to ignore my hunger. I would just be starving all the time. So one of the tricks that I did, I would always drink 2 liters of water to start my day before I even ate anything. That would be the first thing I would do in the morning. And then because I was so hungry after the experiment, I ended up increasing my water intake even more. So first thing in the morning, now I consume 3 liters of water before I even put any type of food in my body first thing in the morning. So that's another thing that I did to help me drop back down to my normal weight that I am right now. Another thing that I did was I ended up slowly eating once again. So for example, yesterday happened to be my medium ground beef and beef liver day, and I told you I have that little spoon. So when I eat it with that little spoon, it'll take me about 10 minutes if I'm doing a 1 pound meal in the morning. Last night I did 2 pounds all at night, so it took me about 20, but it'll take me about 5 to 10 minutes. Whereas if I were to eat it with a tablespoon, I could easily down that within a matter of 2 to 3 minutes. So that's another thing that I did to help me get back down to my normal weight, was I would eat the smaller spoon, and that also helped to keep me a little bit more satiated, because if it takes you 20 minutes to finish a meal, you're going to get full a lot easier than if you consume the same amount of calories in 2 minutes from eating really fast. So if you are the type of person where you are eating to satiation and you're not losing weight, how fast are you eating your food? You want to make sure that you're not eating it too fast, because if you're eating it really fast, you are going to pack on a ton of calories in that short amount of time. But those are just a few of the things that I did to put on 22 pounds of fat in 28 days, and those are a few things that I did to lose the 22 pounds of fat and get back to my normal weight. Now, if you guys have any other questions, go ahead and ask your questions down in the comment section, but that's pretty much it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to keep making these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.